At my deaf daughter's first piano concert, 4 seats beside mine carried the names of people who had promised her they would be there. Every one of those seats stayed empty. Sadie looked toward them before she placed her hands on the keys. She did not need to hear the room to know who had not come. My phone lit up against my thigh. The concert reminder had appeared in our family group chat. My brother Caleb answered it first. "She can't hear applause anyway. She won't know." Before I could breathe, my mother added, "We won't miss his contract signing for this." I stared at the 2 messages until the words stopped looking like language. Then I typed one reply. Understood. I did not beg them to turn around. I did not leave my daughter alone beneath the stage lights so I could argue with people who had already made their choice. Sadie began to play. When the final note ended, a deaf volunteer near the aisle lifted both hands and waved them in the air. One student copied her, then another. Within seconds, the whole room was applauding in a language my daughter could see. Sadie smiled. Hours later, Caleb's business partner looked across a hotel lobby at my entire family and asked, "Why are all of you here?" I moved the signing so you could attend Sadie's concert. That question opened a door Caleb had spent months trying to keep closed. Before the night ended, the company chairman closed the contract binder, looked at my brother, and asked, "Where is her consent?" Caleb went white. To understand why one empty signature cost him the future he had already promised everyone, you need to know what my brother believed silence allowed him to do. I'm glad you're here. Tell me where you're listening from, stay to the end, and subscribe so you don't miss what followed my family's choice. 6 days earlier, I was standing inside the concrete shell of a half-finished apartment building in St. Paul, Minnesota, while October wind pushed dust through openings where the windows would eventually go. It was 2026, and the October cold already knew how to find the gaps in a person's coat. I worked as a city building inspector. My job was to notice what other people preferred to call minor. A railing mounted too low, a fire door that did not latch, a crack someone had painted over instead of repairing. That afternoon, I marked 3 violations, photographed each one, and left before 4 so I could reach Sadie's piano lesson on time. Being late for my daughter was not something I treated as minor. Sadie was 12. She had profound hearing loss in both ears and used American Sign Language as her first language. I had learned with her from the time she was small, first slowly and clumsily, then well enough that our hands could carry an argument across a crowded room without either of us raising a voice. She did not learn piano by pretending sound worked the same way for her as it did for everyone else. Her teacher used a strip of lights to mark tempo. Sadie memorized movement until her fingers knew distances without looking. She felt rhythm through the floor and the body of the piano, sometimes resting one palm against the wood before she began. Nothing about it was magic. It was work. When I entered the studio, she was repeating the final 8 measures of the piece she would perform on Saturday, October 17th. Her shoulders tightened when she missed the transition, but she stopped, reset the light, and tried again without looking toward me for rescue. Her teacher smiled at me, but I kept my hands in my coat pockets. Sadie had asked me not to correct her from the doorway anymore. On the drive home, she waited until we stopped at a red light before signing. Did they all remember? I knew who she meant. My mother, Janet. My father, Martin. My younger sister, Brielle. My older brother, Caleb. The 4 closest relatives Sadie had left besides me. Her father, Thomas, had died in a traffic accident 5 years earlier. Since then, I had been Sadie's only living parent and legal guardian. Caleb liked to call the Brooks family her safety net. I had spent years making sure that net never had a hole large enough for her to see. I unlocked my phone at the next light and showed her the confirmations. Mom had sent 3 heart emojis and written that she would arrive early. Dad had asked whether the arts center had accessible parking. Brielle had promised to bring flowers. Caleb had replied with a thumbs up and the words, "Wouldn't miss it." Sadie studied each message. Then she signed, My seats are beside yours? Yes, 4 seats, all in the front row. She nodded, but she did not smile. No reminders? The light changed, so I drove before answering. Reminders were how I managed my family. I sent calendar invitations, followed up with texts, and called the night before. I told myself I was being organized. The truth was less flattering. I was trying to prevent people from revealing what they would choose without my supervision. We still have 6 days, I signed after pulling into our driveway. Sadie gave me the look she used when I answered a different question from the one she had asked. That evening, Caleb called while I was making soup. His face filled my screen from an office conference room, his tie loosened just enough to suggest exhaustion without sacrificing authority. We have a complication Saturday, he said. Closing day landed on the same date as the concert. I lowered the heat beneath the pot. Ridgeway Freight Analytics, the software company Caleb had founded with Naomi Vale, was being acquired. We did not know the final terms, only that Caleb spoke as if everyone's future had already been arranged. The concert date has been on your calendar for 2 months, I said. I know. Naomi is refusing to move the signing. I had met Naomi once at a company picnic 8 months earlier. She had been quiet, direct, and kind to Sadie. When I sent the digital concert invitation, I had included Naomi because she had asked Sadie about the piano. Her FaceTime contact was still in my phone, though we had never used it. Then you attend the concert and sign afterward, I said. Caleb exhaled through his nose. It is not that simple. There are lawyers, buyer representatives, closing packets, a few formatting changes. Everyone may need to stop by the hotel early, show support, and then we will figure out the rest. Sadie is not something we figure out after the important people are finished. His expression hardened before the smile returned. That is not what I said. It is what your plan does. Mom joined the call before he could answer. Caleb had clearly invited her. She appeared from her kitchen wearing the expression she used when she intended to call my objections selfish. Aaron, this opportunity comes once, she said. Sadie will have other performances. This is her first. And Caleb has worked 12 years for this. From the table, Sadie looked up. She could not hear their voices, but she could read my face. I turned the phone so she could see who was on the screen, and signed a brief explanation. Caleb lifted both hands as though calming a room he had disrupted. No one is choosing against Sadie. We will stop at the hotel early, handle whatever Naomi needs, and come over when we can. When you can is not the promise you made. Mom said my name in warning. Caleb looked past the camera, then said he had another meeting and ended the call. I stood with my thumb over the family group chat, ready to send the concert details again. Parking instructions, start time, Sadie's position in the program. Everything that might make their choice easier. Sadie crossed the kitchen and gently covered my phone with her hand. Not again, she signed. I want to know who remembers. My first instinct was to say busy schedules did not measure love, and one more reminder could prevent unnecessary hurt. Those were the explanations I had used for years, mostly because they gave me something to control. Sadie waited. I locked the phone and set it beside the stove without opening the chat again. All right, I signed. No more reminders. She nodded once and returned to the table. I watched her open her music folder, trusting me not to interfere. For the first time, I understood that protecting my daughter might mean letting her see the choice my family made when no one pushed them toward the right one. 3 days before the concert, Brielle forwarded a digital invitation to our family group chat while Sadie and I were sitting at the kitchen table. The invitation was cream-colored with Caleb's company logo at the top and a photograph of the Minneapolis skyline beneath it. In large letters, it read, Brooks Family Reception. The location was the North Star Hotel. The time was 4 in the afternoon until 6:30. I read it twice. Sadie was cutting 4 name cards from white cardstock for the seats beside mine. She had written each name carefully in black marker. Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Brielle, Uncle Caleb. I opened the concert schedule on my phone. The first student would begin at 5. The program was expected to end shortly after 6. Why does a family reception last until 6:30? I wrote in the group chat. I thought the formal signing was later. Brielle replied almost immediately. Caleb said everyone needs to be there early for photos. A second message appeared from her before I could answer. There will be champagne and some kind of family display. It's supposed to show support before the closing. I looked across the table. Sadie had lined the 4 cards in front of her, measuring the spaces between them with the edge of a ruler. Her concentration made the names look more serious than they would have in anyone else's handwriting. My phone rang. Caleb's name filled the screen. I answered without moving away from the table. Sadie could see his face and mine if she looked up. Aaron, before you turn this into a problem, the reception is part of the closing schedule, he said. Whose schedule? Naomi's. She wants family photos, champagne, and visible founder support before everyone signs. The answer came too smoothly. Caleb had always been good at making a decision sound older than the conversation that created it. The concert starts at 5, I said. Your invitation begins at 4 and ends after 6. No one said everyone has to stay the entire time. Then, why does the invitation say 4 to 6:30? He leaned closer to his camera. Because that is the reception window. People arrive, greet the buyer representatives, take photographs, and leave when they need to. Sadie performs at 5:42. If Mom and Dad leave the hotel after 5, they will miss her. Caleb rubbed a hand across his jaw. Naomi insisted on having the families there before the signing. I'm trying to satisfy everyone. I glanced at Sadie. She was no longer cutting. Her eyes were on my face. Did Naomi personally ask for my parents and Brielle to stand in a hotel lobby for 2.5 hours? She wants the room to feel committed. This is how corporate closings work. I inspected buildings for a living. I knew what people said when they did not want someone to examine a weak support closely. They used broad words. Standard procedure. Industry practice. Everyone knows. What time is the actual signing? I asked. 8. Then there is enough time to attend the concert first. A pause passed before Caleb answered. It is not only about the signature, Aaron. There are conversations before it. Buyer representatives will be moving through the hotel. Naomi wants the right atmosphere. You keep saying Naomi wants it. Because she does. From the table, Sadie signed. What did he say? I turned the phone slightly away and signed back. He says the reception is important to his partner. Sadie looked at the 4 cards, then continued trimming the uneven edge of Caleb's name. My mother joined the call without warning. Caleb must have added her again. Why are we arguing about this? Janet asked. We can go to the hotel, take the photographs, and leave when Caleb tells us we can. When Caleb tells you that you can? She frowned. You know what I mean. No, I know exactly what you said. Mom's mouth tightened. Naomi has been making this process difficult for months. Caleb is doing everything possible to keep the deal alive. The least we can do is stand beside him when he asks. I had never heard Naomi describe the acquisition. Everything I knew about her resistance came through Caleb, and every version made her sound unreasonable in a way that increased his importance. According to him, Naomi questioned deadlines because she could not make decisions. She requested revisions because she enjoyed control. She wanted legal review because she did not trust anyone. Each complaint ended with the same conclusion. Caleb was the person holding the company together. Has Naomi ever told you any of that directly? I asked Mom. I don't need to speak to her. I know my son. Caleb gave a tired laugh. Can we not turn closing week into a trial? I looked again at the invitation. At the bottom, beneath the hotel address, it said, hosted by Caleb Brooks. There was no company event coordinator, buyer representative, or Naomi listed anywhere. Who sent this invitation? I asked. My office, Caleb said. Brielle's earlier message still showed the forwarding information. The original sender was not an office account. It was Caleb's personal email address. Before I could mention it, Dad entered the group call. Martin appeared from his den, glasses low on his nose and an open laptop reflected in both lenses. "I just received the hotel logistics," he said. "Parking looks simple." "What time does it say the formal closing begins?" I asked. Dad's eyes moved towards something on his screen. For half a second, he stopped. Then he looked back at me. "I'm sure Caleb has coordinated it." "That wasn't my question," Mom interrupted. "Martin, don't let her interrogate you." Dad closed his laptop. "We'll make it work." He had seen something. I knew the difference between my father searching for an answer and choosing not to give one. Brielle joined the call from her car, her phone mounted below the dashboard. She was smiling in a way that did not match the tension. "Could we please not ruin this?" she asked. "Caleb is creating opportunities for all of us." "What opportunity is he creating for you?" I asked. Her smile faltered. Caleb said her name quietly, but Brielle had already begun answering. "He said the combined company will need someone to coordinate internal communications and social media. It is not official yet, but he wants me for it." Brielle had been moving between freelance jobs for nearly 2 years. Some months were good, others ended with Mom paying her car insurance. A permanent communications position would change her life, and Caleb knew it. "Has the buyer approved that position?" I asked. "It will be discussed after closing." "So Caleb promised you a job that does not exist yet." "He said he would take care of me." Caleb's voice hardened. "I said I would recommend her." "That is not how she understood it." Mom shook her head. "This is exactly why people stop telling you good news. You examine every word until nothing feels generous." I ended the call before the conversation became another hour of everyone defending promises no one had the authority to make. Sadie had completed the 4 name cards. She picked them up one at a time, checking the letters, then placed them in a row beside my phone. "Can I see them from the piano?" I asked. She nodded. "My teacher showed me the row. Your seat is at the end. These 4 are beside you." I opened the map application and entered both addresses. Riverton Arts Center to the North Star Hotel was 22 minutes under normal Saturday traffic. Even if the concert ended at 6:10 and everyone waited long enough to congratulate Sadie, they could leave by 6:15 and reach the hotel before 7. The formal closing was at 8. There was no real conflict, unless someone created one. My thumb hovered over Naomi's contact. I could call and ask one question. "Did you insist my family arrive at 4? Naomi had met Sadie at the company picnic 8 months earlier and asked thoughtful questions about the piano without speaking to me, as though my daughter were not present. When I sent the digital invitation, Naomi had replied that she hoped closing week would not interfere. Her number was still stored in my phone. I did not call. Part of me feared crossing into Caleb's company business based on nothing more than an invitation that felt wrong. Another part remembered the promise I had made to Sadie. I would not rearrange the test until everyone produced the answer I wanted. A message from Caleb appeared that evening. "Send me a photo of Sadie's concert program when you get it. We'll put it on the family display." I read the request while Sadie practiced in the living room, one bare foot pressed against the floor to feel the rhythm. I photographed the front of the program and sent it. At the time, it seemed like one harmless detail for a family display. The preliminary report later showed what I could not have known that night. While I was studying the hotel invitation, Naomi received an automated alert from Ridgeway's closing data room. A document called Management Continuity Letter had been revised. Its status had been marked Founder Approved. The report also preserved Caleb's message, telling her the update contained nothing important, only formatting changes and comments from the buyer. Naomi marked the document to review at 7 on Saturday evening, before the formal closing. At the time, none of that appeared on my phone. All I had was a reception that did not fit the schedule, a father who had looked away from an email, a sister protecting a job no one had approved, and a brother asking for Sadie's program as decoration for a celebration She might be abandoned to attend alone. Sadie stopped playing and looked toward me. "You are worried," she signed. I set the phone down. "The times do not match. Are they coming?" I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to call each person, read the directions aloud, and make them promise again while I listened for hesitation. Instead, I signed, "They are making choices. We will see which ones." The night before the concert, I opened the family group chat. The message box waited beneath Caleb's request for the program photograph. I typed the start time, deleted it, typed the address, then deleted that too. Sadie stood in the kitchen doorway wearing her pajamas. She looked from my face to the phone. I closed the chat without sending anything and left the phone beside the sink. She watched me for another moment, then signed, "Then it will be real." Saturday, October 17th arrived cold and clear. The temperature was 48 degrees when Sadie and I left our townhouse, and the maples along our street had turned the color of rust and copper. She wore a navy dress beneath her coat and carried her music folder against her chest, even though she had memorized every measure weeks ago. We reached Riverton Arts Center at 3:30, 90 minutes before the concert. The lobby smelled faintly of floor polish and coffee from the volunteers' table. Families moved through the room carrying flowers, garment bags, and cameras, while students tried to look calm beside parents who were more nervous than they were. Sadie checked the printed program before she did anything else. Her name appeared near the middle, with a scheduled performance time of 5:42. She touched the line once, then handed the program back to me. Her teacher met us near the stage and led Sadie to the piano. Together, they checked the portable vibration platform beneath the instrument and the narrow strip of lights positioned beside the music stand. Each light would pulse at the tempo Sadie had practiced. She rested her fingertips against the side of the piano, feeling the vibration as her teacher tested several notes. I stayed a few feet away. My instinct was to ask whether the platform was stable, whether the lights had fresh batteries, and whether the bench had been measured to the correct height. Sadie looked over her shoulder before I could begin and lifted one eyebrow. I held up both hands in surrender. She smiled and returned to the piano. The front row had been reserved for the families of the performers. My seat was at the end, with the 4 seats Sadie had chosen directly beside it. Each chair held one of the white cards she had made at our kitchen table. Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Brielle, Uncle Caleb. I adjusted the cards even though they were already straight. Sadie had placed them where she could see them clearly from the piano. She had not chosen the seats because they were comfortable or close to the exit. She had chosen them because she wanted to look up and know they had come. At 4:15, families began filling the auditorium. A boy carrying a violin posed for photographs with both grandparents. Another student's father arrived with a bouquet large enough to block half the aisle. People apologized as they passed in front of me, then settled into their seats with coats folded across their laps. The 4 chairs beside me remained empty. I checked the time but did not open the group chat. I had promised Sadie I would not remind anyone. Breaking that promise now might fill the seats, but neither of us would know whether they had remembered or simply obeyed another instruction from me. At 4:30, Sadie came to the edge of the stage and looked toward our row. I raised my hand. Her eyes moved from me to the 4 name cards. I signed. Still early. It was not a lie yet. She nodded and returned backstage. At 4:45, my phone vibrated. The calendar reminder I had created 2 months earlier had appeared automatically in the family group chat. Sadie's first piano concert begins in 15 minutes at Riverton Arts Center. The notification sat there for several seconds without an answer. I watched the screen until Caleb's name appeared beneath it. She can't hear applause anyway. She won't know. For a moment, I thought I had misread it. My eyes went over the sentence again, but the words did not improve. Sadie could not hear the sound of hands meeting. Caleb had turned that fact into permission to disappear. He had decided that because she experienced applause differently, she would experience absence differently too. Before I could type, Another message appeared. Mom wrote, "We won't miss his contract signing for this." My fingers went cold around the phone. They were not trapped in traffic. No one had been injured. There was no emergency at the hotel. They had seen the reminder and answered it with a choice. I looked at the 4 seats beside me. Mom's purse should have been on one. Dad should have been studying the program under the auditorium lights. Brielle should have been taking photographs before a volunteer asked her to put her phone away. Caleb should have been checking his watch and pretending he was not emotional. Instead, every card faced an empty chair. I began typing that the formal signing was not until 8. I wanted to remind them that the hotel was only 22 minutes away. I wanted to ask Mom how she could speak about her granddaughter, as though Sadie's experience only counted when it resembled hers. Then the stage lights dimmed. Sadie was somewhere behind the curtain, waiting to walk into a room where she expected to find me watching her. I would not spend that moment arguing with people who had already explained themselves. I deleted everything I had written and typed one word. Understood. I silenced the phone and placed it inside my bag. The program began at 5. I clapped for each student, then remembered that Sadie would not hear whether I did, and continued anyway because applause was not only sound, it was attention. It was showing someone that what they had done had reached you. Between performances, I watched the entrance. Each time the auditorium door opened, a thin strip of lobby light crossed the back wall. A late parent entered during the second piece. A grandmother slipped inside before the third. None of them belonged in the 4 seats beside me. At 5:38, Sadie's teacher appeared near the curtain and checked the light strip beside the piano. My daughter followed her onto the stage. The auditorium seemed to narrow around her. Sadie reached the bench, then looked toward the front row. Her eyes found me first. I smiled and raised one hand. Then she looked at the 4 cards. She did not stare dramatically. She simply counted the empty chairs with one slow movement of her eyes. Her shoulders changed almost too slightly for anyone else to notice. I noticed. Her teacher waited beside the curtain. Sadie placed both feet on the vibration platform, adjusted the bench, and rested her fingers above the keys. The first light flashed. She began. The opening measures were steady. I had heard them through the walls of our townhouse for months, though Sadie had experienced them through movement, light, and vibration. Her hands carried the piece with a confidence built from repetition rather than inspiration. Near the middle, her eyes shifted once toward the empty seats. She came into the next phrase a beat late. My chest tightened, but I did not move. I did not signal or mouth reassurance. She had asked me to stop rescuing her from every difficult second, and this moment belonged to her. Sadie kept one hand on the cord while her eyes found the tempo light. The next pulse came. Her fingers moved again. She recovered without anyone guiding her. The final section grew stronger. I could see the difference in the way she held her shoulders. She was no longer waiting for the 4 people who had chosen not to come. She was finishing the piece because she had begun it. When she played the last note, the room filled with applause. Sadie could see people moving, but from the stage, ordinary clapping could become a blur of hands near bodies. Before I could stand, a woman seated near the aisle lifted both arms above shoulder height and waved her open hands in the air. I recognized her from the volunteer table. Her name tag read Inez Romero. I had seen her signing with another volunteer in the lobby. One of the students near the stage noticed and copied her. Then Sadie's teacher raised both hands. A row of parents followed, then the people behind them. Within seconds, nearly every person in the auditorium had both hands lifted, fingers moving in silent visual applause. Sadie looked across the room. Her gaze stopped on Inez, then moved over the hundreds of hands. The hurt did not leave her face completely, but something else reached it. She smiled. Not the careful smile she used when adults praised her for being brave. This one was small, surprised, and real. I raised both hands with everyone else. For the first time that evening, I stopped looking at the empty seats. After the concert, students and families gathered in a reception room beside the lobby. Someone offered Sadie a paper cup of cider. Her teacher congratulated her on recovering after the delayed phrase, and Sadie signed that the tempo light had brought her back. Inez approached, but did not hug her or tell her she was inspiring. She signed, "Beautiful work." Sadie answered, "Thank you for making the room visible." Inez smiled. "You made them look." When she walked away, Sadie turned toward me. Her eyes dropped to my bag, where I had placed my phone. I could have waited until we got home. I could have said the family had been delayed or that Caleb's closing had become more complicated than expected. Those explanations would have protected the people who had abandoned her, not Sadie. I took out the phone and opened the group chat. She read Caleb's message first. Her expression did not change immediately. Then she read my mother's reply and looked back at the screenshot of the calendar reminder above them. Her hands moved slowly. They knew I would look? There was no gentle version of the truth. That was still the truth. "Yes," I signed. Sadie looked down at the program folded beneath her arm. She pressed the crease flat with her thumb, then handed the phone back to me. She did not cry. That somehow made the ache in my chest worse. She simply stood beside me, while families around us discussed dinner plans and photographs. At 6:32, my phone began vibrating again. This time, the name on the FaceTime screen was not Caleb, Mom, or anyone else in my family. It was Naomi Vale. Naomi's name remained on the FaceTime screen while Sadie stood beside me, holding her folded concert program. I almost declined the call. The reception room was still crowded with students, parents, and volunteers, and I did not want Caleb's business to swallow the final minutes of my daughter's evening. Then I remembered the last time Naomi and I had spoken, 8 months earlier at the Ridgeway Company picnic. She had looked directly at Sadie while signing the few words she knew, instead of asking me questions as though my daughter were not standing there. I answered. Naomi's face appeared for less than a second before the camera turned away from her. The image shook as she crossed a marble lobby, then settled on a scene that made the 4 empty seats feel even colder. My mother stood beside a table, covered with champagne glasses. Dad was near a freestanding sign that read, "Ridgeway's Next Chapter." Brielle held her phone in both hands, photographing Caleb beneath a display of company logos and framed pictures. On the table, beside a silver bucket of champagne, lay a printed copy of Sadie's concert program, the same image Caleb had asked me to send. Sadie leaned closer to my shoulder. She could not hear the voices through the phone, so I angled the screen where she could see the room and signed that Naomi was at the hotel with our family. Naomi turned the camera toward herself. Her expression was controlled, but the muscles along her jaw were tight. "I arrived 7 minutes ago," she said. "I saw Sadie's program on the display, and your mother told me they have been here since 4. I needed to know whether Sadie had already performed, and whether any of them had been there." I looked at the clock on the wall. 6:32. "She performed at 5:42, I said. "They missed the entire concert." Naomi glanced beyond the camera. "Then I needed you on this call before I asked them why." She turned the phone again and walked toward my family. Caleb noticed the screen first. His smile disappeared, then returned in a smaller, more careful form. "Naomi, this is not the time," he said. "I think it is exactly the time." Mom stepped forward, still holding a champagne glass. "Erin, why is she calling you from Caleb's reception?" Naomi stopped between the display table and the sign. Her camera captured all 4 of them behind her. "Why are all of you here?" she asked. "I moved the signing so you could attend Sadie's concert." For several seconds, no one answered. Brielle lowered her phone. Dad looked toward Caleb. Mom's hand tightened around the stem of her glass. "What do you mean? You moved it?" Mom asked. "The formal closing begins at 8, Naomi said. "It was originally scheduled earlier. I moved it after Caleb told me the concert started at 5. My mother looked at my brother. "You said she refused to change the time." Caleb gave a short laugh that sounded more irritated than amused. "This is a misunderstanding. The closing is at 8, but there are events before it. There were no approved events before it, Naomi said. Brielle held up the digital invitation on her phone. We were invited to a family reception. Naomi looked at the screen. By whom? Caleb. I did not approve of family reception. The buyer did not approve one. Ridgeway's communications team did not approve one. Caleb stepped closer. It was a morale gathering. That does not require a committee. Then why did it begin 4 hours before closing? The buyer representatives were expected to move through the hotel. They are not arriving until 7:30. Mom set her glass down with enough force that champagne spilled across the white tablecloth. Caleb told us you wanted family photographs before the signing. He said you wanted everyone here to show support. Naomi's eyes moved to the sign, the champagne and Brielle's phone. I arranged a shuttle to leave Riverton Arts Center at 6:15, she said. It would have brought all of you here before 7. You could have attended the concert and still arrived more than an hour before closing. Dad looked down. I remembered the reflection of the logistics email in his glasses 3 days earlier. He had seen the 8 o'clock start time. Perhaps he had not known about the shuttle, but he had known enough to ask why Caleb wanted them there at 4. He had chosen not to ask. Sadie touched my arm. I signed the conversation as quickly and simply as I could. Naomi had moved the signing. There had been time for everyone to come. The reception was not official. Sadie looked at the family on the phone, then at the program beneath Caleb's hand. Her face became very still. Caleb reached for Naomi's phone, as though he intended to end the call himself. She stepped back. You are dragging Aaron into a company matter because of a family scheduling issue, he said. You made it a company matter when you used my name to create the scheduling issue. I said the pre-closing period was complicated. You said I refused to move the signing. Caleb glanced toward the camera. Erin has always heard what she wants to hear when she is angry. The old reflex rose in me. I wanted to prove my memory, explain the calls, and repeat every word he had used. Then I looked at Sadie. She had already been forced to read one version of her own experience written by people who were not there. I would not bury the truth beneath a speech. You told me Naomi would not move the signing, I said. You told Mom the same thing. Mom turned toward me. Erin, this is not helping. I am not trying to help Caleb. Naomi's voice stayed level. What did he text you during the concert? Caleb's face changed. It was not fear yet. It was calculation. He was deciding which version of the message might survive being read aloud. I opened the family group chat. The calendar reminder appeared at 4:45, I said. Caleb replied, She can't hear applause anyway. She won't know. Naomi did not interrupt. Then Mom wrote, We won't miss his contract signing for this. Mom lifted her hand. That sounds worse without context. The context was her first concert, I said. Caleb moved beside her. It was a private family conversation. You used a false company schedule to create that conversation, Naomi said. Sadie watched my hands as I signed the exchange. When I reached Caleb's message, she turned away from the screen. That movement mattered more to me than anything happening in the hotel lobby. Naomi asked me to send screenshots showing the timestamps and phone numbers. I took them while the call remained open, then sent the images to her. Her phone chimed. She studied the screen without commenting on the cruelty of the messages. She did not promise to punish anyone or tell Sadie that everything would be fixed. Instead, she did something more believable. She began checking what else Caleb's story had touched. Caleb, who authorized this display? She asked. No one needed to authorize it. Who told Brielle there would be a communications position after closing? Brielle's head snapped toward him. That has nothing to do with this, Caleb said. Who marked today's closing packet as founder approved? The lobby seemed to change around that question. Mom looked confused. Brielle stopped holding her phone like a camera and held it like evidence she suddenly regretted possessing. Caleb's answer came after a fraction too much silence. We are aligned. Naomi looked directly at him. That was not my question. I told you the final changes were formatting and buyer comments. I saw the automated alert. Caleb crossed his arms. Then you knew the packet had been updated. I knew a document had been revised. I did not approve every revision because an automated system used the word founder. Mom spoke as though the problem could still be reduced to personality. Naomi, Caleb has worked for this deal for 12 years. Surely whatever document you mean can be discussed without making a scene in front of his family. Naomi turned toward her. This scene was created before I arrived. She faced Caleb again. Did you tell Aaron I refused to move the signing? Caleb looked at me through the phone, but Naomi was waiting for my answer. Yes, I said. Naomi nodded once. Then I need to see what else he says I approved. She moved away from the display table and began walking toward the elevators. Through the shifting camera, I saw Caleb following her. This is absurd, he said. You are reopening a closing packet because Aaron is upset about a concert. I am reopening it because you represented my decision one way to your family and another way to me. The documents have already been reviewed. Not the final red line. Naomi pressed the elevator button, then spoke to someone off camera. Call company counsel. Freeze editing access to the data room. No one uploads, replaces, or removes anything until we compare the versions. Caleb's voice sharpened. You do not have the authority to lock me out of my own closing. I am not locking you out. I am preserving the record. The elevator doors opened. Naomi stepped inside alone and turned the camera toward her face. Aaron, keep your phone near you. Buyer's counsel may ask you to authenticate those messages. Only the sender, time, and wording. Nothing else. I looked at Sadie. I am not bringing her into this. You will not need to. The messages came to you. Behind Naomi, the elevator doors began to close. Caleb appeared between them for a moment, his hand raised as if he could still stop the conversation by reaching it quickly enough. Naomi ended the call. The reception room around me returned all at once. Cups touched tables. Parents spoke over one another. A student laughed near the doorway. Sadie stood beside me, watching my face for the part I had not yet explained. I signed that Caleb had lied about Naomi refusing to move the signing. Because of that lie, Naomi was checking a company document he claimed she had approved. Sadie frowned. Did she? I do not know yet. Did he say she did? Yes. Sadie looked toward the auditorium entrance, where the 4 name cards were still resting on empty chairs inside. Then she signed. Naomi did not choose that? No, I signed. She did not. We drove home through early evening traffic. I kept my phone in the cup holder, screen facing up, but it remained dark for most of the trip. At 7:35, 5 minutes after we entered the townhouse, an email arrived from an attorney representing the buyer. It contained a secure video conference link and one sentence. We need 5 minutes to authenticate the messages you received. The email from buyer's counsel arrived while Sadie was changing out of her concert dress. The secure link would open at 7:50. Beneath it, the attorney had written that I was being asked to confirm only the source, time, and wording of 2 messages. I would not be questioned about Ridgeway's finances, the acquisition, or Naomi's decisions. I read that paragraph twice, before showing it to Sadie. She stood in the hallway wearing sweatpants and one of Thomas's old college shirts, the hem hanging almost to her knees. I explained in ASL that the lawyers wanted me to prove Caleb and Grandma had sent the messages. I told her she did not have to appear on camera or answer anything. Will they ask about me? She signed. Only what the messages said, not what you felt. She went to the kitchen table. I will stay here. I set my laptop across from her. I wanted to send her upstairs or turn her chair away from the screen. Instead, I let her choose where to sit. At 7:50, the link opened into a waiting room. A notice stated that the meeting was confidential and being recorded by counsel. When I was admitted, 6 faces appeared in separate boxes. Naomi was in a conference room at the North Star Hotel. Caleb sat 3 chairs away. Between them were two attorneys. Graham Sutter, chairman of the acquiring company, occupied the largest box. A woman introduced herself as Laura Chen, counsel for the buyer. Miss Walker, thank you for joining. You are not a party to this transaction. We only need to authenticate the messages you provided to Miss Vale. Please answer from your own knowledge. I understand. Caleb leaned toward his camera. This is unnecessary. I have already acknowledged the messages were mine. Laura looked at him. Then, authentication should take very little time. She asked me to state my name, my relationship to Caleb, and the phone number connected to the family group chat. She shared two screenshots. The first displayed the automatic concert reminder, Caleb's message and the timestamp. The second showed Mom's reply, and my answer. Did you capture these images from your own phone? Laura asked. Yes. Were they altered before you sent them to Miss Vale? No. Do you recognize the number associated with the message? She can't hear applause anyway. She won't know. It belongs to Caleb. And the second number? My mother, Janet Brooks. Laura asked what time Sadie's concert began, and whether Caleb had previously told me Naomi refused to move the signing. I answered yes to both. I did not explain what I believed Caleb intended. The lawyers had asked for a narrow truth, and a narrow truth was enough. Laura explained why I was not being dismissed immediately. The next portion was a limited, non-privileged authorization review tied directly to Caleb's representation that Naomi had approved the schedule and the closing materials. I could remain only while the parties established what had been represented and whether the packet was authorized. If the discussion moved into legal advice or negotiation strategy, I would be removed. Graham adjusted the closing binder. Before we proceed, I want confirmation that every ancillary agreement in the final packet has been properly authorized. Naomi looked into her camera. The management continuity letter has not been authorized by me. Caleb turned toward her. We discussed continuity for weeks. We discussed the concept. I did not approve the revised letter uploaded this afternoon. Laura shared a document labeled Final Revision, 2:17 p.m. A column of red text appeared beside an earlier draft. I did not understand every term, but the changes were plain once she summarized them. The revised letter guaranteed Caleb the exclusive chief executive role for 3 years after the acquisition. It added a retention bonus and performance earnout, gave him veto power over replacing several senior managers, and restricted Naomi's operating authority. Graham's expression did not change. Was this version approved by both founders? No, Naomi said. Caleb rested his forearms on the table. Naomi knew continuity protections were necessary. The buyer wanted one clear leader. That is not the question, Graham replied. One of Ridgway's attorneys opened the shareholder agreement and read the section requiring written approval from both founders when an agreement reduced one founder's operating rights or granted disproportionate control to the other. A board resolution was also required. No signed resolution appeared in the packet. Laura enlarged the signature page. Caleb's name carried an electronic signature. The line beneath Naomi's name was blank. Caleb spoke first. We were aligned in principle. She knew the packet was being finalized. Naomi's face remained still. You told me the final changes were formatting and buyer comments. You received the data room alert. I received an automated notice that a document had been revised. I did not approve the revision. You marked it for review. Yes. Review is not approval. Caleb looked toward Graham. She sent an email saying we could keep moving forward. Laura opened the email. The sentence appeared halfway through a discussion about financial diligence. We can keep moving forward once the requested diligence items are complete. Laura read it aloud, then said, This message does not refer to the management continuity letter. Caleb's patience cracked. Everyone knew the company needed leadership stability. Naomi saw the packet. She knew we needed continuity. She never told me to pull it. Sadie looked up from across the table. She could not hear Caleb, but she saw his face and the way Naomi turned toward him. Naomi spoke slowly. "Not stopping you is not consent." The room went quiet. Graham turned the closing binder toward himself and flipped to the final signature page. Caleb's eyes moved from Graham to Laura, then to Naomi, as though one of them should repair the result he had already announced. Graham placed one hand on the open binder. "Mr. Brooks, you represented that all founder approvals were complete. We had substantive agreement. Where is the written approval?" Caleb did not answer. Graham looked at Naomi's empty signature line, then closed the binder. "Where is her consent?" The color left Caleb's face. No one raised a voice. Graham simply stated that the closing was suspended. The buyer could not complete a $68 million acquisition, while a material governance document remained unauthorized and its approval status had been misrepresented. Laura instructed everyone to preserve the closing packet, version history, emails, and access logs. Ridgeway's counsel said the board would meet the next morning to limit Caleb's authority while an independent review began. Graham made it clear he was not canceling the acquisition that night, but no one would sign until the buyer knew whether other representations had been handled the same way. Caleb looked into his camera. "This entire thing started because Aaron was angry about a concert. I had not been asked a question, but Laura allowed me to answer. No. It started because you told everyone Naomi made a decision she did not make." Graham thanked me. Laura removed me from the conference before the attorneys discussed next steps. The screen returned to my desktop. For several seconds, neither Sadie nor I moved. The heating system started beneath the floor. I closed the laptop and signed a simple explanation. Caleb had told the buyer Naomi agreed to a document. She had not signed it. The signing had been stopped until the company investigated. Sadie looked at the laptop. "Like he said I would not know?" The question hurt because it was exact. "Yes," I signed. My phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen. I answered without putting her on video. "What have you done?" she demanded. "Caleb says the buyer stopped everything because you sent private family messages to Naomi." I answered a question. "You humiliated him in front of his partner and the buyer. Do you understand how many employees depend on this deal? Do you understand what Sadie played tonight?" There was a pause. "This is bigger than a piano concert." To Caleb, "Everything is bigger than the person he asks to move aside." Mom said I had always resented my brother's success. She said one ugly sentence should not erase 12 years of work. I listened until she began blaming Naomi for being difficult and Sadie for becoming the center of a dispute neither had created. Then I stopped her. "I told the truth about where you chose to be." I ended the call. A text from Caleb arrived less than a minute later. "You just cost every person in this family everything." I looked across the table. Sadie was folding the concert program along the same crease, carefully aligning its edges before pressing them flat. I turned my phone face down and left Caleb's message unanswered. 2 days after the closing was suspended, a courier delivered an envelope to my office just before lunch. The return address belonged to a Minneapolis law firm I did not recognize. Inside was a letter from a lawyer named Daniel Mercer, who identified himself as personal crisis counsel for Caleb Brooks. He did not represent Ridgeway, the buyer, or anyone else in my family. The distinction appeared in bold, near the bottom of the first page. The document behind the letter was titled, "Proposed Factual Declaration of Aaron Walker." My name was already typed beneath a blank signature line. I closed my office door before reading further. The declaration described the messages from the concert as private family banter made during a stressful transaction. It stated that no one had intended to discriminate against Sadie because of her deafness. It said the family's absence had been caused by an unexpected and time-sensitive business obligation. None of those sentences surprised me. The next one did. During her performance, Sadie Walker was not aware of the absence of her extended family and suffered no interruption or distress as a result. I read it again, slower. Caleb had already decided Sadie would not know when he sent the message. Now that the decision had damaged him, His lawyer wanted me to sign a cleaner version of the same lie. The final paragraph asked me to confirm that the incident did not reflect Caleb's professional judgment, leadership ability, or treatment of employees. It requested my cooperation to prevent a private misunderstanding from causing disproportionate harm to innocent third parties. I reached for a pen. My first instinct was to write "no" across the signature page, photograph it, and send it back. I wanted Caleb to understand that the answer did not require a lawyer, a conference, or another carefully arranged room. Then I stopped. The document was addressed to me, but the sentence at its center belonged to Sadie. It described what she had noticed, what she had felt, and whether the empty seats had affected her. Refusing on her behalf, without letting her see, it would still be deciding for her. I placed the papers back in the envelope and finished the inspection report on my desk. The work took twice as long as it should have, because my eyes kept moving toward Caleb's version of the concert. When I picked Sadie up from school, I told her there was a document at home that talked about her. I did not call it important or frightening. I told her she could read the relevant part, ask questions, and decide whether she wanted me to respond. She studied my face, then signed. "Is it from Uncle Caleb?" "From his lawyer." "Because of the concert?" "Yes." She nodded and looked out the passenger window for the rest of the drive. At the kitchen table, I placed the declaration between us. I explained that the lawyer wanted my signature as her mother. Sadie was not being asked to sign a legal document, and no one had the right to force her to speak to the company. I summarized the business language, then slid the page containing the sentence about her across the table. Sadie read it once. Her finger stopped beneath the words. "Was not aware." She looked up at me. "They said I did not see. They want me to say you did not realize the seats were empty during the performance." Sadie pulled a pencil from the cup beside the refrigerator and drew a circle around the sentence. Beneath it, she wrote 2 words in careful block letters. "Not true." She pushed the page back to me. I asked whether she wanted me to sign the declaration with that correction. Her hands moved immediately. "No signature." I waited, making sure I had not shaped the answer by the way I asked. Sadie tapped the sentence Caleb's lawyer had written. "He said I would not know. Now he wants you to say he was right." "Yes." "He was not." "No." She folded her hands on the table. "Do not sign." I scanned the page with her handwritten correction and emailed it to Daniel Mercer. I did not write an explanation of Caleb's childhood, his pressure at work, or my mother's habit of excusing him. None of that changed what the declaration tried to do. I wrote 1 sentence. "You do not get to use her silence as your statement." The reply came 12 minutes later. Mercer said his client regretted that the language had caused additional distress and would be willing to discuss revisions. I did not answer. At 4:30, Mom appeared on our front step without calling. Through the window, I saw her standing beneath the porch light with both hands clasped around her purse. I considered not opening the door, but Sadie was upstairs practicing. I did not want Mom ringing the bell until the vibration carried through the walls. I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me. "You should have called." "You would not have answered." "That was information, not permission to arrive." Her face tightened. She looked smaller than she had in the hotel lobby, but not because she had understood what she had done. She looked like someone whose certainty had been taken away. "Caleb has been suspended from signing anything for his own company," she said. "They will not even let him speak to the buyer without lawyers present. That is between Caleb and the board. It became your business when you sent those messages. He made it my business when he used Naomi's name to get all of you to abandon Sadie." Mom glanced toward the upstairs windows. "Keep your voice down. Sadie cannot hear us through the glass. She can still know you are here." The reminder unsettled her. She looked toward the door as though Sadie might already be watching. "Do you understand what could happen if the buyer walks away?" she asked. 55 employees could lose their jobs. Brielle's position is gone. Caleb's reputation may never recover. People are saying he misrepresented documents. Did he? That is not for us to decide. It was for you to decide that his reception mattered more than Sadie. Mom pressed her lips together. We thought the signing was happening then. Dad saw the 8 o'clock schedule. She looked away. I had not told her that before. Her silence confirmed she either knew already or understood immediately why Martin had hidden it. Your father did not understand all the details, she said. He understood numbers on a clock. This is exactly what you do. You take one mistake and turn it into a verdict on the entire family. I thought of the 4 white cards resting on empty chairs, of Sadie finding the tempo light after looking at them, of Mom standing beside champagne while the concert program served as decoration. What did Sadie play? I asked. Mom frowned. What? At the concert. What piece did she play? That is not the point. What did she play? Her mouth opened, but no answer came. She had not watched the recording. She had not asked for the program. She had come to my home to speak about Ridgeway employees, Caleb's reputation and Brielle's imaginary job, but she did not know the name of the piece her granddaughter had practiced for months. I came here to fix this, she said. No, you came here because Caleb is losing things. That is cruel. It is accurate. The upstairs curtain shifted. Sadie stood behind the window. She could not hear our words, but she could see Mom on the porch. I stepped between them. You need to leave. Mom stared at me. You are keeping my granddaughter from me because you are angry with your brother. I am asking you to leave because you arrived without permission and still cannot tell me what Sadie played. She walked down the steps without saying goodbye. That evening, Dad called. He did not ask whether Mom had visited. His voice sounded tired, as though he had spent 2 days rehearsing the first sentence. I saw the closing time, he said. I sat at the kitchen counter, while Sadie worked on homework across the room. I know. The logistics email said 8. I assumed Caleb had a reason for wanting us at the hotel early. You asked him? No. Then you did not assume. You chose not to know. Dad breathed into the phone. Your mother was already upset with you. Caleb said questioning the schedule would create confusion. I thought staying quiet would keep things from getting worse. For whom? He did not answer. I watched Sadie erase a line from her worksheet and write it again. I should have said something, Dad said. Yes, I am sorry. I did not tell him it was all right. An apology did not require me to remove the weight from the person offering it. I am not asking you to forgive me tonight, he added. That is good, because it is not my decision alone. After we ended the call, an email arrived from the independent counsel retained by Ridgeway's board. It requested that I preserve any messages, screenshots, invitations, or photographs related to the concert, hotel reception, and closing. The letter clearly stated that it was a voluntary preservation request, not a subpoena. No one demanded my phone or access to my accounts. They asked only that I avoid deleting relevant material while the preliminary review continued. Similar requests had been sent to Mom, Dad, and Brielle. I saved the group chat screenshots, Caleb's messages, the digital reception invitation, and the declaration his lawyer had sent. Then I placed the physical pages in a folder and wrote the date on the cover. Sadie watched me from the other side of the table. More papers? She signed. Yes. Yes. Do they say I did not know? Not these. These ask people not to erase what happened. She considered that, then returned to her homework. My phone vibrated before I finished labeling the folder. Brielle's name appeared on the screen. The reception invitation came from Caleb's personal account, she wrote. I still have it. I called Brielle, instead of answering her text. She picked up on the 4th ring. Her camera was off, but I could hear her breathing, as though she had been waiting for someone to tell her what to do. Do not delete anything, I said. I wasn't going to. Forward the original invitation to the independent counsel. Do not edit the subject line or remove the forwarding details. There was a pause. Will Caleb know it came from me? The email already shows where it came from. That is not what I asked. I looked across the kitchen. Sadie was finishing her homework. For 3 days, everyone in my family had spoken as though the most dangerous thing in the world was being identified as the person who had made a choice. Yes, I told Brielle. He will probably know. Her breath shook. He said the reception was approved. He told me the buyer wanted photographs showing that the founders had family support. Did anyone from the buyer contact you? No. Did Ridgway's communications team? No. Then send what you have. Brielle said Caleb had instructed her to photograph the champagne table, the company display, and every relative who arrived. He wanted several pictures ready before Naomi reached the hotel. He had also told her to capture one with the printed concert program visible because it would show that family remained important during closing week. The program had not been a reminder of where they should have been. It had been a prop, proving Caleb could abandon Sadie and still claim her. Brielle forwarded the original invitation that evening. The metadata showed Caleb had sent it from his personal account. No company event planner, buyer representative, or lawyer appeared among the recipients. She also sent 3 photographs from the hotel. Each contained a timestamp. The first had been taken at 4:12, 48 minutes before the concert began. The second showed Mom raising a champagne glass beneath the Ridgway's Next Chapter sign. The third showed Caleb placing the printed program on the display table himself. None of those items proved what had happened alone. Together, they made his explanation harder to maintain. Over the next 3 days, independent counsel spoke with each of us separately. My interview took place by video at the kitchen table, the same place where Sadie had circled the false declaration. The attorney began by explaining the limits. She represented Ridgway's board. Not me, Naomi, or Caleb. The review was preliminary, meant to determine whether the board needed immediate action. A fuller investigation could continue later. She asked me to share my screen. I opened the group chat screenshots. Caleb's request for the program photograph, the false reception invitation, and the declaration from his crisis lawyer. I described only conversations I had personally heard. "Do you believe Mr. Brooks intended to deceive the buyer?" she asked. "I cannot know what he intended inside a room where I was not present," I said. "I know he told me Naomi refused to move the signing. That was false." The attorney then showed me a timeline assembled from records other people had voluntarily provided. Dad's logistics email displayed the formal closing at 8. His interview note recorded that he had seen the time and chosen not to question Caleb. Mom had submitted her messages and invitation after being reminded that the request was voluntary. She attached a note insisting everyone believed Caleb was protecting the company. Brielle's material filled the next section. The original invitation came from Caleb's personal account. Her photographs carried timestamps. A message from Caleb instructed her to create closing momentum and added, "Once everyone is gathered and celebrating, no one will want to be the person who slows this down." The attorney moved to Ridgway's records. The data room log showed Caleb uploading the final management continuity letter at 2:17 and marking it founder approved. The version history showed that the earlier draft lacked the control rights added that afternoon. There was no board resolution, no email approving those revisions, and no signature from Naomi. I did not need another explanation of every clause. I had already heard the final version summarized during the closing call. What mattered now was the sequence. Caleb uploaded a revised document that benefited him, labeled it approved, and told Naomi the changes were only formatting and buyer comments. Naomi's records confirmed the rest. She had moved the closing to 8, arranged the 6:15 shuttle, and received Caleb's message, minimizing the final revision. No single item carried the whole case. The invitation explained why the family was at the hotel. The photographs established when they arrived. The group chat showed what Caleb said about Sadie. Naomi's email disproved the schedule he blamed on her. The audit log showed what he marked approved. Her blank signature showed what he never obtained. Each record supported the next. Caleb attended his interview with a lawyer. I did not hear the conversation, but the preliminary summary later described the explanations he gave. He said Naomi had participated in weeks of discussions about leadership continuity. He said she knew the buyer wanted stability. He said she had seen the automated notice and had not immediately demanded that he remove the document. When counsel asked whether Naomi had approved the revised control rights, Caleb did not point to a signature or a board vote. He said she had every opportunity to object. That sentence stayed with me. He did not claim she had said yes. He argued that she had failed to say no quickly enough to stop him. The afternoon before the preliminary report was completed, I printed the messages and placed them in chronological order on the kitchen table. I was trying to understand the sequence without turning our home into another conference room. Sadie came in carrying a glass of water. She looked at the screenshots, then at the photograph of Caleb beside the hotel display. "More questions?" She signed. "The company is checking what he told different people." She sat across from me. I showed her only the pieces she already understood. Caleb told our family Naomi would not move the signing. Naomi had moved it. Caleb told the company Naomi approved a document. She had not signed it. Sadie studied the blank line beneath Naomi's name. He decided what Naomi meant too? Her question cut through 6 days of legal language. Yes, because she did not stop him? That is what he says. Sadie frowned. That is not yes. No. I moved the papers aside. He treated no answer like his answer. She looked toward the piano in the living room. He did that to me first. I wanted to correct the order. Caleb had probably been speaking for Naomi long before the concert. The business record suggested a pattern older than the 4 empty seats. But Sadie did not mean first in time. She meant first in the part of his behavior she had been forced to feel. Yes, I signed. He did it to you. She took her water upstairs without asking what would happen to him. That was another difference between Sadie and the adults around Caleb. She did not need punishment explained before she trusted the truth. The preliminary report arrived on the 6th day. It did not accuse Caleb of forging Naomi's signature or stealing company money. It stated there was sufficient evidence that he had materially misrepresented founder approval, bypassed required governance procedures, and created inappropriate pressure around a document that benefited him personally. The report also noted that he had used inconsistent statements about the closing schedule to bring his family to the hotel early. That behavior mattered because the false schedule was part of the atmosphere he had created around the unsigned agreement. Ridgeway's board extended the temporary limits on Caleb's authority. He could not sign documents, communicate with the buyer on behalf of the company, or direct employees involved in the review. The report was not a criminal conviction. It did not settle every dispute. It gave the board enough verified information to decide whether Caleb should remain CEO while the acquisition continued. That evening, Naomi called me. She looked exhausted. The office behind her was nearly dark. "The board votes tomorrow morning," she said. "I cannot tell you how anyone will vote. I am not asking you to. The buyer has not walked away. They are willing to continue if Ridgeway corrects the governance problem and removes the unauthorized letter. Caleb had told my family that without him, everything would collapse. Naomi's call suggested the company might survive precisely because people had finally stopped accepting his answer for everyone else. What happens after the vote? I asked. That depends on the vote. Naomi paused, then added, "The board did not act because your family missed a concert. The concert was how I discovered the document." "I know." After we ended the call, I looked toward the piano, where Sadie's hands had returned to the keys. The board would decide Caleb's title in the morning. Sadie had already decided something more important. He no longer had the right to decide what her silence meant. The board voted at 9 the next morning. I was inspecting the fire stairs of a renovated office building when Naomi's name appeared on my phone. I finished measuring the landing before answering. 1 week earlier, I might have abandoned the inspection halfway through because Caleb had made his crisis feel larger than every obligation around it. This time, I recorded the measurement, closed my clipboard, and stepped outside. "The vote is over," Naomi said. I leaned against the brick wall beneath the emergency exit. What happened? 4-1. Caleb was removed as CEO for cause. The result did not surprise me, but hearing it still changed something in my chest. Caleb had spent years speaking as if his title were part of his identity rather than a position other people had entrusted to him. Who voted against it? I asked. He did. Naomi explained only what the board had authorized her to share. The independent director chaired the portion concerning Caleb, and his conflict was entered into the minutes. Ridgeway's bylaws still allowed every seated director to vote. Caleb declined to recuse himself and cast the only vote to keep himself in office. Naomi, the two investor directors, and the independent director voted to remove him. His employment agreement allowed termination for material misrepresentation and violations of company governance. He had been given counsel, time to respond, and an opportunity to challenge the preliminary findings. He had spent most of that opportunity arguing that Ridgeway could not survive without him. The board disagreed. Caleb lost the chief executive role, the change of control bonus, the retention package tied to the acquisition, the performance earnout, and the right to lead the company after the merger. His unvested options were canceled under his employment agreement. He did not lose the shares he had already earned. No one seized his bank accounts or erased 12 years of work. When the acquisition eventually closed, he would still receive the lawful value of his vested ownership. He lost the extra power he had tried to take without Naomi's consent. The buyer is willing to continue, Naomi said. They want the unauthorized letter removed and a transition plan in place. So the employees keep their jobs? That is the plan. Caleb's last message to me had claimed I had cost everyone everything. The board had now removed him without destroying the company, the buyer, or the employees he had used as shields. What happens to you? I asked. I will remain during the transition. The board is appointing an interim CEO. Her answer was professional, almost spare. Naomi did not sound triumphant. She sounded like someone who had inherited an enormous amount of work, because another person had mistaken control for leadership. Before ending the call, she said, "The board's action was based on the documents and his own responses, not on your opinion of him." I know. I thought you should hear that clearly. After the call, I returned to the fire stairs. The landing was still 3 inches too narrow. Caleb's removal had not changed the measurements, and the building did not care what my family had lost. For the first time in a week, that felt reassuring. Brielle called that afternoon. She did not begin with an apology. "They told me there is no communications position," she said. "I was sitting in my car outside Sadie's school, waiting for dismissal." "Who told you?" "A woman from Ridgeway's Human Resources team. She said no position was approved, budgeted, or even proposed. Caleb told you it would happen after closing. He said he wanted me there. He said the combined company would need someone loyal." Loyal had been one of Caleb's favorite words. He used it when he meant a person who would accept his version before checking whether it was true. "Did he ever introduce you to HR?" I asked. "No." "Did he send you an offer?" "No." "Then he gave you a promise he did not have the authority to keep." Brielle began crying. "I missed Sadie's concert for him." "You missed it for the future you thought he could give you. That is not better." "No." She waited for me to soften the answer. "I did not. I sent the invitation and photographs because I was scared," she said. "Caleb said I betrayed him." "You provided records after independent counsel asked for them. He says the board would never have removed him if all of us had stayed quiet." "That may be the first accurate thing he has said." Brielle stopped crying long enough to inhale sharply. "I did not say it to punish her. The records had not created the damage. They had only removed the cover Caleb depended on." When Sadie came out of school, I ended the call. Brielle asked whether she could apologize to her niece in person. "That is Sadie's decision," I said. "Do not come to the house without being invited." Mom arrived at Dad's house before I could speak to either of them. By evening, they had started a family group call that excluded Caleb, but included me. I answered because Sadie was doing homework nearby, and I wanted to know what pressure might reach her next. Mom's face appeared first. "They fired your brother," she said. "The board removed him." Do not hide behind careful language. Careful language is why the buyer knows Naomi never approved that letter. Dad sat beside her, shoulders curved forward. Brielle joined from her apartment with swollen eyes. Mom said the buyer might still close the deal, but everything Caleb had promised, the family was gone. Brielle's job, the celebration dinner, the charitable foundation Mom had imagined they would announce after the acquisition. I had never heard of a foundation. Did Caleb have authority to create any of those things? I asked. That is not the point, Mom said. It is the entire point. She accused Naomi of stealing the company from him. Dad interrupted before I could answer. The company is continuing, he said. Mom turned toward him. Without our son. Because of what he did. It was the first time I had heard Dad contradict her, without lowering his voice afterward. Mom stared at him. He looked at me through the screen. I saw the schedule. I knew something did not fit. I stayed quiet because Caleb had trained all of us to think questioning him was the same as hurting the family. Brielle wiped her face. He promised me something that did not exist. Mom refused to join them. He was trying to take care of us. No, I said. He was trying to make all of you dependent on the future he controlled. The call ended when Mom closed her laptop without saying goodbye. 6 weeks later, Ridgeway completed the acquisition under revised terms. The management continuity letter disappeared from the closing package. Naomi remained for the transition, working beside an interim CEO selected by the board. Employees kept their jobs. Caleb received the value of his vested shares, but none of the special compensation or control he had tried to attach to the deal. He had money, but no title, no retention package, and no office from which to tell everyone else what had already been decided. That was when he began asking about Sadie. His first email said he loved her and wanted to explain that his message had been written under extraordinary pressure. He said one mistake should not erase 12 years of being her uncle. He did not mention the empty seats. He did not mention Naomi's blank signature. He did not ask what Sadie had played. I showed the email to Sadie after explaining that she did not owe him an answer. Then I asked what contact she wanted with each person. She did not want to see Caleb or invite him to any performances. She wanted Mom to stop contacting her directly for now. Dad could send letters, but he could not carry messages from anyone else. Brielle could write an apology, but she could not arrive at our home or school without permission. I wrote the choices down exactly as Sadie gave them. I did not soften them for my family or make them harsher to satisfy my anger. Caleb sent another email after learning there might be a future recital. Please let me attend, he wrote. I need a chance to show her I am sorry. Sadie read it beside me. Her hands moved with none of the hesitation she had shown when looking at the 4 empty seats. He wants back in because he lost things. I nodded. She placed my phone face down on the table. This time, the silence belonged to her. 4 months passed before Sadie agreed to perform in public again. She never stopped playing. Most evenings, the vibration of the piano traveled through our townhouse while I cooked dinner or finished inspection reports at the kitchen counter. She practiced the same difficult measures until her shoulders relaxed and her hands moved without hesitation. Whenever her teacher mentioned another recital, Sadie changed the subject. I did not ask whether she was afraid of looking at empty seats again. I already knew the answer was more complicated than fear. The first concert had taught her that walking onto a stage gave other people an opportunity to make promises about where they would be. She still loved playing. She no longer trusted invitations. My old instinct was to solve that problem before she could name it. I wanted to find the perfect venue, speak to every organizer, and guarantee that nothing would remind her of Riverton Arts Center. Instead, I waited. In February, I received a newsletter from an arts nonprofit in Minneapolis. The organization was hosting a small recital for young deaf and hard-of-hearing musicians. The venue had a portable vibration floor, visual count-in equipment, and interpreters for families who needed them. My hand moved toward the registration link. I stopped before opening it. That afternoon, I printed the information and left it beside Sadie's music folder. I did not place a pen on top or circle the deadline. I told her only that the program existed and she could read about it whenever she wanted. She carried the page upstairs without answering. For 5 days, it remained on her desk beneath a stack of schoolwork. I noticed it every time I passed her room, but I did not ask. On the 6th evening, she brought the paper to the kitchen and placed it beside my plate. "I want to see the room first," she signed. "We can visit. Visit only. I understand." The nonprofit occupied a renovated community theater near the river. The performance room was smaller than Riverton's auditorium, with 80 seats arranged in a shallow curve around the stage. No seat was far enough away to make a face disappear. A coordinator showed Sadie the vibration platform beneath the piano and the visual count-in mounted beside the music stand. An interpreter stood near the entrance speaking with another family. Inez was arranging programs at a table in the lobby. When she saw us, she smiled and signed, "Good to see you." Sadie smiled back. "You volunteer everywhere?" "Only places with bad coffee." Sadie laughed. Inez did not mention the first concert or ask whether my daughter had recovered from it. She explained where the waiting room was, showed us the accessible exits, and returned to stacking programs. The coordinator asked whether Sadie wanted to try the piano. She sat on the bench and pressed one key. The vibration moved through the platform beneath her feet. She tested another note, then looked around the room. There were no reserved family signs, no name cards, no front row set aside for people whose titles mattered more than their behavior. On the drive home, I waited for Sadie to speak first. "I want to do it," she signed when we stopped at a traffic light. "Then we will register." She shook her head. "I will register." That evening, she completed the form herself. I helped only when it asked for emergency contact information and parental consent. She selected the piece, requested the visual count-in, and chose the rehearsal time. When the form asked how many family seats should be reserved, Sadie entered 0. I almost corrected it. "You do not want seats together?" I asked. "I want seats," she signed. "Not family seats." The distinction was clear to her before it was clear to me. A chair did not become meaningful because an organizer labeled it for blood relatives. The person sitting in it made it meaningful. The guest list remained blank for another week. Dad's letter arrived during that time. He had followed Sadie's rule. He sent it through the mail addressed directly to her without asking me to deliver a message or persuade her to answer. The envelope contained 2 pages written by hand. Sadie asked me to read it first. Dad did not claim he had been confused about the closing time. He wrote that he had seen 8 o'clock in the email and understood there was time to attend the concert. He admitted he had stayed quiet because Caleb sounded certain, and Mom was already defending him. He wrote that silence had allowed him to imagine he had not made a choice. Then he acknowledged the truth. He had chosen the comfort of avoiding conflict over the discomfort of protecting Sadie. He did not ask to attend the new recital. He did not ask her to call or forgive him. The final line said he would continue writing only if she wanted him to. Sadie read the letter twice. "Do you want to answer?" I asked. "Not now." I nodded. "Do you want to invite him to the recital?" The question left my hands before I understood what I had done. Sadie looked at me. I had presented it as a choice, but I had still placed Dad's name in front of her. I had turned his apology into a reason she should reconsider before she had asked for one. "I am sorry," I signed. "You did not ask me who to invite." She folded the letter along its original crease. "You want him there?" "I want him to become someone you could safely choose. That is not the same as you choosing him now." Sadie placed the letter in her desk drawer. "He is not on my list." "All right." This time, I did not add another question. Brielle's apology came several days later. She did not come to the house. She mailed a padded envelope containing the printed concert program Caleb had made from the photograph I sent and placed on the hotel display table. A faint ring from a champagne glass marked the lower corner. Brielle had written on a separate card. I used this to help make his celebration look like a family event. I knew where I was supposed to be, and I chose what I thought he could give me. You do not have to answer me. Sadie ran one finger over the stain. She kept it? She signed. I think it was among the photographs and materials she gave the investigators. Sadie placed the program beside Dad's letter. She did not tear it up or display it. She treated it like what it was, a record of something that had happened. I do not want her at the recital, she signed. I will not invite her. A short email from Naomi arrived the following week. She said the acquisition had closed under the revised structure, and the leadership transition was underway. Employees had retained their positions, and the interim team was operating without Caleb. She did not attach a gift card, offer a scholarship, or ask to be part of Sadie's life. At the end of the message, she wrote that she hoped Sadie still enjoyed playing. I showed the email to Sadie. She did not ask to come, Sadie signed. No, I like that. So do I. The guest list began to fill after that. Sadie invited her piano teacher first. Then Inez. She chose 2 students from her music class, a girl from school who had learned enough ASL to complain about math homework, and my coworker Denise, who had attended every one of Sadie's small classroom performances since Thomas died. She invited the people who had shown up repeatedly without requiring a crisis to remind them. My name appeared near the top. Seeing it there affected me more than I expected. For years I had believed being Sadie's mother automatically placed me inside every important moment. Her list reminded me that even my presence should be something I continued to deserve. There were 12 names when she finished. No Caleb. No Mom. No Dad. No Brielle. I read the list and felt my attention settle on Dad's absence. His letter had been honest. He had not demanded forgiveness. Part of me believed that effort should earn him 1 seat near the back. That was the part of me that still wanted to manage outcomes. It wanted to turn good behavior into a predictable reward, as if Sadie's boundaries were a system I could administer fairly. She was watching me. I folded the list and handed it back without suggesting a change. The week before the recital, Sadie placed the final copy on the refrigerator. Beneath the 12 names, she had written one additional instruction in dark ink. Do not add anyone for me. On the morning of the recital, I woke before my alarm and immediately began making a list. Confirm the driving route, check the weather, charge my phone, bring safety pins, tissues, water, and a printed copy of the program. Message the guests so no one misunderstood the start time. I reached for my phone, then stopped. Sadie's guest list was still attached to the refrigerator beneath the instruction she had written for me. Do not add anyone for me. The sentence had been about names, but it applied to more than names. It meant I did not need to build another protective wall around a day she had already planned. Sadie came downstairs wearing black pants and a pale blue blouse. Her music folder was beneath one arm. A small bag hung from her shoulder. Did you pack water? I signed. She opened the bag and showed me a bottle. Extra hair tie? She held up 2. Program? She pointed to the folder. I nearly asked whether she wanted me to check the visual count-in equipment when we arrived. Instead, I signed, You are ready. Sadie studied me with a hint of amusement. That was difficult for you. A little. She smiled and pulled on her coat. The drive to Minneapolis took less than 30 minutes. February snow remained in gray piles along the sidewalks, but the roads were dry. Sadie watched buildings pass outside the window while tapping the rhythm of her piece against her knee. I kept both hands on the steering wheel. At the nonprofit theater, the lobby was already warm with conversation. An interpreter stood near the registration table. Parents carried music folders and winter coats while young musicians moved between the waiting room and the stage. No banners announced anyone's next chapter. No champagne waited beneath company logos. Nothing in the room suggested that one person's achievement existed to decorate someone else's future. Inez sat behind the volunteer table arranging name tags. When she saw us, she raised both hands in greeting. Sadie signed. Still bad coffee? Inez lifted a paper cup and made a face. Worse. They laughed together. Inez did not ask whether Sadie was nervous. She did not tell her she was brave for returning to a stage. She handed her a performer badge and pointed toward the rehearsal room. Sadie's piano teacher was already waiting inside. She greeted me, then spoke directly to Sadie. Do you want help checking the setup? Sadie considered the question before nodding. I followed them into the performance room but remained several feet behind. The piano stood at the center of the stage. Beneath it was the portable vibration platform Sadie had tested during our first visit. A narrow visual count-in device sat near the music stand. The interpreter position had been marked beside the front row, far enough from the piano not to distract the performers. Sadie stepped onto the platform and pressed one key. She waited for the vibration beneath her feet, then played 2 more notes. She adjusted the piano bench herself. Her teacher activated the visual counter. 4 lights flashed in sequence. Sadie shook her head and pointed to the second light. It was slower than the tempo she had requested. The technician crouched beside the device. What speed do you need? Sadie entered the number on the control panel. The lights pulsed again. This time she nodded. I had noticed the delay too. 4 months earlier, I would have stepped forward before Sadie could respond. I would have explained the tempo, checked the cable, and asked for another test. She had already handled it. The technician looked toward me only after Sadie finished. Anything else? He asked. I looked at my daughter. She shook her head. We are good, I said. The guests began arriving 20 minutes before the program. Denise came first, carrying no flowers, because Sadie had said she did not want anything in her hands after the performance. Her piano teacher's husband arrived with their daughter. 2 students from music class chose seats in the second row. Sadie's school friend waved from the aisle and signed a clumsy but enthusiastic greeting. Every person in the room had been invited by Sadie. I did not scan the entrance for Caleb. I did not wonder whether Mom might appear and sit silently in the back. I did not imagine Dad waiting outside with another letter, or Brielle hoping an apology would earn her a seat. They were not on the list. For once, the absence of my family did not create an empty space. Those seats belonged to other people. Before the program began, I joined Sadie in the waiting room. She stood beside the wall, while another student reviewed sheet music near the window. I adjusted the cuff of her blouse, then dropped my hands before I could find another unnecessary task. You look beautiful, I signed. She glanced down at herself. I look like I am playing piano. That too. Her teacher entered and said Sadie would perform 4th. The visual cue in the waiting room would flash when it was time to approach the stage. Inez appeared behind her and lifted both hands. Good room, she signed. Sadie nodded. My room. Inez smiled, then returned to the lobby. The first performer was a boy with a violin. The second played a drum arrangement using vibrations transmitted through a platform. A girl slightly younger than Sadie performed a short piano piece while watching a visual metronome beside the keys. From the waiting room, Sadie could feel traces of vibration through the floor. She stood with her shoulders loose and her hands at her sides. I felt nervous enough for both of us. When the signal flashed, Sadie stepped toward the curtain. Her teacher asked, Ready? Sadie looked through the opening toward the audience. I could see the moment she counted faces. Not to measure who had failed to come, but to recognize the people she had chosen. Her school friend sat beside Denise. Inez had moved to an aisle seat. Her teacher's family watched from the second row. Every face she searched for was there. Sadie looked back at me. I decide when, she signed. Yes. She walked onto the stage. The room became still as she crossed to the piano. She set her music folder on the stand, though she no longer needed the pages. Then she checked the position of the bench and placed both feet on the vibration platform. I sat in the first row without any name cards beside me. The technician waited near the visual count-in controls. He did not activate them. Sadie looked toward him and raised one finger. Wait. Her hands rested above the keys. For a moment, she did not move. I saw the hesitation in the slight tension along her shoulders. Returning to a stage had not erased what happened at the first one. Courage had not made memory disappear. No one rushed her. Her teacher did not begin the lights. The technician did not assume the pause meant something had gone wrong. I did not stand or signal reassurance. We waited for Sadie to tell us what she needed. She took one slow breath, looked toward the seats she had filled herself, and lowered her feet more firmly onto the platform. Then she nodded. The count-in lights began. Her opening notes were softer than they had been during rehearsal. By the second phrase, the movement of her hands became steadier. She followed the light only when she needed it, feeling the rest through the floor and the wood beneath her fingers. Near the middle of the piece, she missed a transition. One note landed late. The next came too quickly. My body leaned forward before I caught myself. Sadie kept her hands on the keys. She waited for the next pulse, found the rhythm, and continued. No one rescued her because she did not need rescuing. The final measures rose, with more strength than the first. Sadie's shoulders relaxed, and the room seemed to move with her, even though she could not hear it in the way I did. When the last note ended, she kept her fingers on the keys until the vibration faded. Inez raised both hands. The rest of us followed. Visual applause filled the room, not as an act of pity or a lesson someone had been taught by her pain, but as the language this audience had already agreed to use. Sadie looked over the lifted hands. This time, her smile did not arrive because a stranger had saved an empty moment. It came because she had built the moment herself. Afterward, she remained near the piano for a moment, while the next performer waited behind the curtain. Her teacher asked whether she wanted help stepping down. Sadie shook her head. She looked toward me, and I waited for her signal before standing. That was when I understood what had changed between us. I had spent years believing my job was to move first, to remind, arrange, prevent, and soften. Sadie had taught me that respect sometimes meant remaining still long enough for her choice to become visible. When I remember that recital, I remember the applause and the way she recovered after the missed transition. But the moment that held everything came before the first note, when the technician waited at the controls and no one mistook her pause for permission to act. The room waited. Sadie lifted her hand, and this time, nothing began until she said she was ready.